Steve Hartshorn is with us. Steve is the National Chair, of course, of the Police Federation of England and Wales. Afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon.
I mean, on the face of it, you know, sacking somebody who's a wrong-un sounds like a good idea. But there are concerns that you have at the Federation on this.
Absolutely, two things. None of us in the Police Federation or any police officer across the country wants to have criminal or corrupt officers within their ranks. That does us all a massive disservice and it affects public confidence. But what we say is that the current situation with police regulations are fine. They work. I think you'll find it's chief constables calling now. It's a bit like sort of bolting the door after the horse has bolted. They've had opportunities to make sure vetting was done properly in the past, make sure that misconduct regulations are used properly. They haven't. They have failed. There's been a chronic failure of leadership to address the issues, and I would argue, probably quite successfully, that many of the cases with some of these high-profile officers that have committed serious crimes could have been prevented had there been earlier interventions and dealt with by leaders effectively in a timely manner.
In terms of the sort of amount of cases, I mean, it's been a tricky time for the police. It's been particularly a tricky time for the Met, where, you know, we have seen these horrendous cases. I mean, I mentioned before a couple of very high-profile ones, but there are others, and WhatsApp groups and various other accusations. And, I'm the first to point out every single time, Steve, that we are still talking about a very small minority of officers. But, of course, it leaves a terrible smell with the police. So it's kind of understandable, though. You know, I've got a lot of colleagues who simply say, well, we don't trust the police anymore. You know, we used to be the few bad apples people, not any longer. And I still retain the few bad apples position, because I think demonstrably that is, and factually, that is the case. But the image of the police has been tricky. So the sense that you can't get rid of bad officers is a very real one, right?
To say that you can't get rid of them is easy for a chief constable or a commissioner. The reality is that if they present good evidence, do a good investigation, and something we'd like to come out of this, these headlines, because at the moment it's headlines. It's not been laid before Parliament. It could take 6 to 8 months to become a reality or law, which is police regulations. Let's have some proper accreditation and training for the professional standards people that investigate police officers, the appropriate authority that bring the cases, and indeed chief officers, so that they understand that we're not employees, we don't have employment law, we haven't got the recourse to employment rights, but we have to follow police regulations. Because if they fail and breach regulations, who holds them to account? You know, so that's our concern. Yeah,
no, indeed. I mean, we've also heard cases of officers with criminal records getting hired or turning up for the interview. They have a criminal record. It might not be for this kind of offence, but still, nonetheless, you'd imagine if anything's going to preclude you from being an officer, having a criminal record would be right up there.
It should, and that's been a failure of vetting. So until very recently, there was no national consistency or standard. We had vetting levels, which, again, if you look through that, you can make a decision that, depending, say someone had a criminal conviction when they just turned 18 and they've applied 25 years later, you could argue that, look, everyone deserves a second chance. You know, if it's a very, very low level, very, very minor type of crime, is what we're trying to achieve here. You need good, solid people that can do the job. That's not condoning crime. That's the reality that in any job, people can have a criminal record and do things. So if they fail to apply good vetting and common sense, again, that's a failure of leadership.
Is there a failure of officers themselves, though, and I'm thinking of things like the Wayne Couzens case within the Met? This is your force as well. You said on this programme a little while ago some of the revelations that were happening didn't surprise you, whereas many people were saying they were surprised. You were very honest and said, actually, there are systemic problems. And with somebody like Couzens, where there appeared to be so many red flags along the way, and nothing happened, that's also an issue, isn't it?
That's concerning, because if people have come forward, and I'm not sort of privy to some of the finer details of the case, but if officers have come forward and raised concerns and they've not been listened to, that's gone through supervisors, through sergeants, inspectors, chief inspectors, superintendents, maybe up to the commissioner's office. And if they've not acted, then there's a complete failure in the chain of command to address those concerns, to perhaps appease people and turn a blind eye. You can't do that. There needs to be a thorough culture change, and some of these changes that they want, you can understand what they're saying, but we say they already have that ability now, that if you present good evidence, present a good case, like taking anybody to court, you can achieve that very same outcome.
So is your fear, Steve, that this could be used to fire officers without due recourse from the officer, who may say, well, actually, no, that really didn't happen, but a chief constable has gone, well, no, sorry, I've got the power now to do this, you're gone?
You'd like to think that they make any decision to dismiss or fire somebody based on evidence. However, we've seen senior officers make some serious mistakes in the past. We have very little confidence they're going to continue to improve on that sometimes, because you look at cases in the Met Police where people have been hired who've committed sexual offences, they've then been retained as a police officer. That is unacceptable. So if chief officers are now going to have that ability to fire people, they need consistency. They should have some training as well to make sure they understand they're doing it properly. Again, it seems it's too much too late to achieve something that, had the relevant checks been done properly in the likes of Carrick, Cousins and Provan, some of these things would never have happened. We wouldn't have victims of crime.